Hello. Just going to give it a couple of seconds to make sure that everything tech-wise is working. Let me check on here. Okay, it looks okay to me. Because last time I did one of these Facebook Lives, I had my phone the wrong way around. The audio wasn't working. So I'll give it a couple of minutes to see that everything's okay. And if it doesn't look right or you can't hear me or anything, please do comment so that I can fix it before I get fully in the swing of things. Okay. All looks fine from my end. So let me know if it's not, but if not, I will begin and see how it goes. Okay, so good morning. My name is Katie Smyth, and I'm going to be doing one of these presentations for around the next kind of 50 minutes to an hour or so, see how we go. Just talking a little bit about my experience with Tefl Heaven. I did the program with them and was teaching in Costa Rica and Peru. And then also kind of go into the how not to suck part, which is basically things that I wished I'd kind of known when I was starting out teaching, things that have helped me a little bit along the way. But mostly as well, just having kind of feeling a bit more confident with it and knowing that you are kind of capable and, you know, can do this experience and have the kind of amazing experience that I've certainly had with it, and hope to have kind of more teaching experiences along the way as well. Just for a bit of context, so this this photo I look kind of crazy on it, but this in Cusco, Peru, when one of my students decided to bring her rabbit to class. Kind of random, but great. So that's just a little insight into how happy I was that day. Obviously, thoroughly enjoying myself. And also a bit of an insight into how random teaching can be at times. And kind of, yeah, having the ability to go with the flow and have the rabbit in the room with you at the same time. So yeah, makes me feel a bit like sad looking at that photo, remembering what a great teaching day that was. Okay, great. So if you can already see and guess what TV program or TV series this is from, I'm quite obsessed with The Office. So this is the US Office and Michael Scott. So hopefully today or after kind of dipping in and out of this, you'll go from the kind of top Michael Scott. That was certainly how I felt before I embarked on my kind of Tefl experience, to the below Michael Scott, which is kind of where I am now and how I felt kind of having had the experience and got some teaching behind me as well. Okay, so obviously the aim of it is to make you all kind of have a bit more of an insight. Obviously, as I've mentioned, any questions or anything, please do comment on the stream. I'll keep an eye on this as we go, so I can hopefully answer any questions that people have at the end. And if you are watching this on replay mode, please do obviously contact us via email, the Instagram, Facebook, Messenger, and that kind of thing. And we can answer, you know, either me or a member of the team can answer any questions you have about anything that was covered. So this is a slight overview of where I'm planning on going with this today. I'll start off with a little bit about me, then move on to challenges that I did face during my kind of training and afterwards in the classroom as well, and how you can face them and find different tactics and ways to overcome them. I'll also give you some real life examples of things that I struggled with whilst I was teaching, climatizing. Obviously, TEFL is teaching English as a foreign language. You will be in a new country, you'll be in a completely new environment. So that is something that is well worth kind of thinking about before you leave. So I'll talk a little bit about that. Vacation versus vocation, and kind of obviously you are abroad, but you are, full-time work as well. So a little bit about that. And then finally, I will wrap it up with the kind of key takeaways and that kind of thing and how to contact us. So I hope that sounds good. I really do hope that it's helpful. So yeah, let's get into it. Okay, so a little bit about me then. So I don't know if you can tell by the accent, but I am from England. I'm from Liverpool, which is in the northwest of England. I am 25 and I was a history graduate. So I went to university and studied history. I can't say it's been particularly useful for me right now. But yeah, kind of anyway. And when I graduated, COVID was kind of beginning. So I started working for a public relations company, was living back with my family in my kind of childhood bedroom, working away online as everyone kind of was doing different things during COVID. As with kind of everyone else, COVID definitely kind of kicked whatever my idea of my 5-year plan was going to be, as I had wanted to travel and get some experience abroad. So I kind of stuck with my PR job, very lucky to have something. And then kind of as everything started opening up again, I don't know if some people might be watching this, might be working in the kind of corporate world at the moment. But I kind of felt like I can't do this yet. I need to get abroad and have some different experiences. Tefl was always something I funnily had in my notes app from like a really young age, because my cousin had actually been teaching abroad in Thailand. He would go on and on at kind of family dues and that kind of thing about his experience. He was still in contact with a lot of the teachers that he worked with, the older students that he'd had. And the experiences sounded absolutely amazing. And I kind of thought, if he can do it, I think I can do this. And I wanted to certainly get out of the kind of 9 till 5 slog that I was feeling. So I was Googling around, trying to find a way to get my certification, because I was not qualified yet, didn't have my TEFL, and had zero experience teaching either. So I knew I wanted a bit of support and guidance with the whole experience and how to go about it. And then when I was Googling, that's when I found out about TEFL Heaven. Then there was, obviously, I had only been working for a short time, certainly didn't yet have the kind of money and the financial commitment of the program. So I had to stay in Liverpool a bit longer than I'd wanted to and kind of get the money to be able to do it. So yeah, and then some of you might already be going through the process with Tefl Heaven, some of you might be kind of thinking and wondering about it. But then I kind of had my interview and all that kind of thing, and knew, there's so many different countries to choose from. I knew I wanted to go to a Spanish-speaking country and kind of help boost my language skills after having studied kind of a tiny bit of Spanish growing up. So I went and did my program in Costa Rica, which I'm not going to even start talking about it in that much detail, because I could talk about Costa Rica all day. But yeah, still have our group chat with all the people I did my program with. The beach, it was paradise, and kind of came away with my TEFL qualification as well. And right now I am currently in a hostel in Uruguay. So I finished my bit teaching in Cusco, Peru, And now I'm continuing kind of traveling and moving around as well. So Uruguay, it's about 9 a.m. at the moment. And I don't know where everyone else is from, but kind of good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Okay, so that is enough about me. You've kind of got a bit of an insight into who I am, why I'm talking to you, and the kind of experience I've had so far as well. Hopefully that's helpful. This photo, oh my gosh. Okay, right. So kind of moving into the next section then is a bit about overcoming challenges. Obviously, I've spoken just now very positively about the experience I had, which, you know, I wouldn't be talking to you today if I hadn't had a great experience. But like with anything that's worthwhile, there are challenges that you will face and that are, you know, very easily overcome. Part of the reason why going through kind of something like Tefl Heaven is so great is the kind of cohort that you have with you. I will always say that, you know, it's quite difficult to overcome different challenges and everything on your own. I definitely lent on the people around me and kind of talk to people, and you have that community for, you know, days where you just want to go home and have some home comfort and that kind of thing. Okay, so firstly then was the having zero teaching experience. I've kind of mentioned this briefly, but I had zero. I've always been interested in teaching. I've had family members who've done it before, but when it came to me myself, I had zero clue kind of what it entailed, how you would even start teaching someone a language from basic level when the students have zero, you know, understanding of the language so far. So I was terrified about it and wasn't sure if I would be, you know, any good at it. This photo is actually me in after I had had a mini little breakdown in my practical teaching week. And this is me like, it's okay, Mom, I'm going to get back into the classroom for my next lesson. So yeah, it's not all, not every lesson is going to be the most amazing, best lesson of your life. And it's kind of learning to be patient with yourself and understand that and kind of know that, you know, every time a lesson doesn't go 100% amazing is a learning curve and something that you can learn from. So this is my, like, I was crying just then and now I'm going to go back and teach another lesson. So yeah, and I think it's also about kind of the old habits bit that I'm kind of linking to is growing up in school. You're taught a certain way. I mean, I certainly was. It's kind of, you'd go into the classroom, you'd have your textbooks and you'd kind of dully work through everything and do these comprehensions and everything. Tefl is a completely different type of teaching, definitely a different style of teaching, which I found it very difficult to like ease up, you know, not be very formal and just kind of be silly and learn to go with the flow in the classroom. And I think that is kind of the old habits or kind of style of teaching that many of us are used to growing up. So the Tefl style is definitely very refreshing. It's definitely very different. Some of you might have seen some of the videos Mike has done about use of games in the classroom and that kind of thing. You know, everyone knows that a classroom is more engaging and more fun when there are different things going on and you're not kind of just sat reading through textbooks. And particularly when it comes to languages, it's more memorable if, you know, you're playing games and they remember the words, and the kind of repetition and the drilling of that definitely stays in their heads. So I learned so many different games throughout my time teaching. Even I was teaching adults and teenagers, and you'll be surprised, a lot of people think adults don't want to play games. They do. Most of them do. And they will be like, I remembered it from that game we were playing, So it's definitely a really good technique, and kind of be aware that it is a different teaching style. You don't speak kind of the local language in the classroom. So my attempt at learning Spanish actually was very useless to me when I was in the classroom. And I had to kind of learn to be silly, act things out when you're trying to convey different words and different meanings of different words as well. So kind of being able to shake off them old habits is definitely really helpful. Real life examples. Okay, so my first example of when I had a challenging situation was all self-inflicted, because I was in my practical teaching week, and I was, I had a class, and this is part of some of the programs, is you will have a teaching week where it's in person. Well, obviously you're in person teaching, and your trainer, so shout out to Jackie, my trainer, she will be watching you and kind of giving you advice on how the lesson went and things that, were really good and things that can be improved and that kind of thing. So we were doing animals in my basic class, and I had printed out all of these ducks and all of these dogs, and we were like drilling the different words. And I was kind of obviously at the front teaching this, not thinking too much about it, just trying to drill like duck, dog. And the students just really did look very confused. So I am like, what is happening? Have I got something on my face? What's going on? And anyway, one of the students is like, are these not the same thing? Like duck, dog, duck, because they sound so similar. So I'm obviously like, amazing, this is great. I've chosen two of probably the most similar sounding animals to teach this basic class, and I'm being assessed on it. So, that was not a great experience for me. We left it off, I explained, you can write on the board, showed them the spellings of it, and it was all fine. However, my piece of advice on this one is to kind of run through the lesson beforehand, which I wasn't really doing. And even just kind of saying them, I would have hopefully picked up on that before the class and saved myself and the students some confusion and stress with the duck dog situation. So that was something that I definitely learned from. And my trainer was like, listen, Katie, you couldn't have gone for two more similar things. So once I kind of got into the classroom, once I'd qualified, I would run through my lesson plans and make sure that I wasn't unnecessarily confusing myself and others around me. So that's a real life example, and something worth kind of bearing in mind during your training and when you go into teaching kind of for real, so to speak. Another thing that I found quite challenging was engaging teenagers. And it's something that I would regularly think about myself at that age and try and put myself in their shoes. Like, what would I find fun? What would I find interesting? A lot of the teenagers that I were teaching were after they had had school. So they're tired, they're already like, oh, I've got another hour with this girl from England drilling different words at me. So it did honestly take me a little while to try and think of ways to engage them and, not play games that are too childish, and then not play games at all, because everyone likes to play games. I enjoy playing games in the classroom. So, I found that really difficult. But once I had kind of eased up a bit and started to relax with the teaching, you get to know your students on a really amazing level. Obviously, when you're teaching them every day and that kind of thing, you build kind of really great relationships with them. And a lot of my teenagers in Peru were really interested in K-pop. So a lot of them, like, it was so cool. They would go and do these like K-pop dances and these competitions and everything. So I started kind of incorporating pieces of that into the classroom to try and engage them. So parts of the music, parts of the culture, and we would talk about that in English and have different debates and conversations, and kind of comparing that culture to Peru. So we had a really great time with it. And I mean, I definitely learned a lot about it as well. But I found that things that teenagers are interested in, they can talk and talk and talk about it. So, it got them speaking English, it got them kind of explaining different things to me. And so, yeah, having a bit more of like less structure and that, kind of more structure to keep them engaged and things planned, but then have your planned section of the lesson with no structure so that they think it's kind of, oh, we're going with the flow and we're talking about this, even though in my head I'm like, I've got 20 minutes to do this. So yeah, I found that really good. And to kind of just go with them and what they're interested in definitely helped engage them in the classroom as well. In terms of general engagement, I've kind of already like dipped into this slightly, but no one wants to turn up to an hour-long class and read from a textbook and have you explain different verbs and conjugations for an hour straight. Get your class talking, get them moving around, get them being up. I also found that the way that you kind of lead the class is the kind of energy that you'll get back from it. So certainly when I started, I was like quite formal, quite nervous, obviously like terrified at my new teaching venture that I knew nothing about. And you could kind of sense that energy, that like nervous energy coming back in the classroom. So I would say it'll kind of reflect how you're feeling and how you're getting on with everything. So definitely kind of bring that energy, be silly, act things out, keep it engaging, move around the classroom. You'll learn all about these kind of techniques and how to keep it vibrant and everything as you go through your Tefl qualification. But it's one of them things that I'm like, it legitimately helps the overall vibe of the class when you turn up, feeling good, ready to go, and have kind of got the energy to keep everyone engaged. And yeah, kind of, I just kept kind of keeping my younger self in mind the whole time. Like, would young Katie find this interesting? No, she wouldn't. Okay, let's, move on or try and incorporate this in a different way. Okay, and finally, imposter syndrome, right? I know this is like one of them, maybe like one of them buzzwords that people use a lot. I kind of just mean it in terms of having had zero experience. I definitely didn't feel qualified enough to do the job. And I was teaching adults. And I was like, well, I am 25. Well, I started when I was 24. And I was in a classroom with kind of lawyers, dentists, all of these kind of older, really, really, really bright people. And I just felt completely underqualified and that I was in the wrong place and I didn't know what I was doing. So all I really wanted to say about this is if you can speak English, you are qualified. You know the language and you understand it like a native. Which does sometimes mean that I would not understand the grammar and the rules behind different things because as a native, you're just like, well, it just is. That's just how we say it. So I certainly learned a lot about the reasoning behind things. But yeah, if you can speak English to a native level, you're more than qualified to be able to teach it. That's what the students want. They want to be immersed in the language. They want to be around it. And a lot of my students wanted to have an English accent, which was quite difficult to try and because so much of the kind of English that they were around in Peru is American English because of different music, films, that kind of thing. but they would say like teacher, like an English person. So they're very proud of that. And then, yeah, the bit about kind of teaching adults as well. I absolutely loved all of my, even like talking about them, I'm like, oh, I miss them. But I had a great relationship with all of my students, and you do get really, you get really bonded with them. You see them every day. And yeah, there was nothing to fear from the fact that they were adults. They just still wanted to learn the language, and were kind of happy to be around someone who understands it to a native level as well. So the only piece I want to say about that is, and it's not too helpful because I'm saying don't feel it, but kind of be aware that you might feel it. I certainly did going in, and know that kind of once you build them relationships, you get more comfortable, you are completely qualified to be. I'm just going to check that there's no, I wasn't really checking if anyone was asking any questions or anything. So I've just checked, and I think we're all good. It's like, oh, imagine if there's like things on there and I'm just yattering. Okay. Yeah, so the kind of basis of that bit is you are going to suck at first, and that's okay. So, no one begins a new job or a new qualification or degree or anything and is an expert at that straight from the off. It's, I can't sit here for an hour and teach everyone how to not 100% suck and find things difficult, because I certainly did, and I definitely learned the most from the situations that didn't go very well. I remember there's, being times where I would plan lessons, and times that they were like really prepped. I was like, this is literally going to be the best experience. I'm so prepped for this. They've absolutely flopped. And times where I've kind of gone with the flow more and kind of seen where the lesson was going naturally, have been some of the best lessons. So, there will be times where you think that wasn't a good one. But it's kind of being ready for that and being aware of that and being okay with it, Okay. Culture shock, right? So as I briefly mentioned, I received my qualification in Costa Rica, and then I began teaching in Cusco, Peru. Obviously, being from England, they are worlds apart, not only kind of in terms of distance, but language. In Peru, they speak Spanish, but they also have obviously different languages like Quechua. And culture and everything, food, weather, everything is completely different to rainy England. So kind of being aware of the cultural differences, I did look into it before I left. Obviously, I would highly recommend that as well. So I looked into it before I left, but nothing will fully prep you for just the general things that are different. And yeah, that's when kind of leaning on different people, and kind of being aware that you might find some things difficult, but give yourself some grace, and you definitely get used to it. So in terms of these kind of random photos that I have on the slides, so a lot of people obviously go abroad and miss their pets. I actually only have 2 goldfish at home, and I can't hand on heart say that I miss them, but I know a lot of people do miss their pets and that kind of thing. So this is why I have a photo of the local dog, who we saw day in, day out, which was really cute. That might, it's going to help you massively, but I just thought it was a cute photo. That other photo is watching the World Cup. So I don't know why, but being away from England during that, I definitely was like, oh, everyone's out watching it all together. And I'm not with them, But if you'll see the other photo, was Paddy's, which is an Irish bar. Me and all the other kind of teachers, we would go and watch it. I obviously had the English flags on my face. I was having a great time. But there are going to be times, obviously, when things are happening at home, you know, you have Christmas, Thanksgiving, birthdays and that kind of thing. And it is weird, you know, it is strange kind of sometimes being away from that and feeling really far away from it. But you'll find your kind of comforts. We spent a lot of time in Paddy's and Molly's, which is another Irish bar, just to feel slightly kind of at home there and that kind of thing. So you'll find different ways and different things to do. And then this was our Christmas tree. So it was my first Christmas kind of away from home. But yeah, still celebrated it, still kind of can bring your own traditions and different things as well. So yeah, not every kind of, obviously every country is very different, and not everyone is exactly like you. So in terms of climatizing, it's kind of being open to it, learning about the culture, diving into it. I think it's obviously very lucky, you know, you're very lucky to be able to be in a different country and be able to immerse yourself so fully in that new environment. Because obviously, kind of as I am now, kind of traveling around quite quickly and that kind of thing, you see parts of the country, but mostly the kind of touristic parts, and you're ticking all of the, you know, top 10 things to do. But living somewhere, you get to know locals, you pick up more of the like slangy parts of the language. So it's such a kind of special way to be able to live and work somewhere at the same time. One example I had was when I was teaching in Costa Rica, and they have like Costa Rican time. So I know there's obviously an English stereotype about being very punctual. Costa Rica, it's completely different. It's totally normal to kind of be 30 minutes or a bit, you know, later to things. And I remember when I was like preparing my classes and everything, and the students would turn up really late. And I, in my head, I'm like, oh my God, why are they so late? I've planned this and they've missed half of it. But, you know, they're not being rude. They're not kind of, it's not a reflection on your teaching or your class or anything. It's just how it is. It's a cultural difference. So it definitely took my kind of parts of my, I don't know, rewiring or something here to be like, okay, chill out, Katie. It's not personal. And that kind of thing. So it's being aware that things like that are going to crop up, and yeah, go with it, and you know, don't take everything so personally. Like I was like, they hate lessons. This is why they're always so late. No, they're not. They're late to everything. It's not a personal thing. And yeah, kind of obviously homesickness as well. Totally normal. You know, in a lot of instances, you're very far away away from home. So there was certainly times where I was like, oh, first Christmas, first Easter, all them kind of things away from home. But it's kind of, obviously it is what you make of it. Me and the other teachers had the most amazing Christmas. It's definitely Christmas in Cusco, something I'm going to remember for a very long time. I feel very like kind of blessed to be able to have had that experience. So yeah. There will be times that you do feel it. I did a lot of like video calls and that kind of thing with people from home. They're never kind of as far away as you might have, you know, you might feel. You can always pick up the phone and check in and give them, you know, the lowdown on everything that's going on in your new country and everything. Okay, this section is kind of the vacation versus vocation. So obviously it's very easy to kind of be complacent, and I felt it, and you know, you can kind of stay where you're not happy but you're comfortable, you're getting income, you know, it's all kind of fine. I definitely had this dawning moment when I was working in PR of like, this can't be it. Like, I did really enjoy my job, but I still felt like, you know, there's got to be more than this at 25. So, you know, at least now I won't think in like 30 years, what if I'd have had that experience? What if I'd have gone for it, kind of thing. But yeah, I certainly felt, especially getting my qualification in Costa Rica, like the vacation part of my brain was like, this is a vacation. I'm just going to be able to, you know, get a job afterwards and I can keep traveling with all the money and blah, blah, blah. But what I wanted to touch on with this is obviously it is a job. In all honesty, the Tefl certification was a lot more difficult than I had initially thought, with like my vacation Costa Rica side my hand. And yeah, you are in the most beautiful kind of paradise in a new country, and you have your weekends to enjoy that. But the actual qualification, you know, it's a lot of hours, and there are parts of it that can be challenging. So it's, you know, being aware that it is a qualification as well. You have got the kind of responsibility of teaching people a new language, so being aware of that. And yeah, it's so funny because teaching was never something I'd kind of thought of. I thought I would have it on the side whilst I, you know, just traveled around. But now, having had some experience with it, it is genuinely something I'm passionate about. So it's definitely kind of turned into more of a vocation for me. And certainly for a lot of other people that I did my qualification with, I think felt the same. You know, I'll go to Costa Rica and I'll teach for a little while. But now the majority of people are still teaching and kind of moving around to different countries and that kind of thing. These photos, obviously, as you can see, there's one of us on Christmas Day where we're in red. But I guess it's just to kind of show some of the highlights of kind of being abroad and meeting the children that you'll work with. And, you know, I look a lot happier, trust me, there than I did when I was working and kind of not feeling fulfilled, and that I was, you know, doing the wrong thing and this can't be it forever. The kind of vibe I felt before I went away. Okay, so I think that's all I wanted to say about that section. So this is the kind of final slide I have. But these are two of my classes. So obviously of my adult classes that I had whilst I was teaching. And this is on my last day. So, you know, it's not zoomed in enough for you to see the tears that were shed. But I was so sad leaving, which obviously is an example of the kind of amazing time that you can have. But yeah, the key kind of pieces of advice that I was taught by my Tefl trainer was to keep it super simple. So I think sometimes it's very easy to overcomplicate things and get too into the nitty-gritty, and as you've probably heard now, I can kind of talk myself into a lot of like confusing little traps sometimes, but always kind of keeping in mind that this language is a foreign language to the students that you're teaching, and sometimes less is more. So keeping it simple, trying not to overcomplicate everything. I remember there was one lesson that I had, and the word get in English has a ridiculous amount of different meanings. I think it's like 12 different meanings or something. And I was teaching a basic class, and so you'll obviously teach kind of depending on where you are. It goes from basic, I taught to advanced. So obviously as they get more advanced, you go through the different meanings of the word get and that kind of thing. And one student asked it in one of my more, you know, like high basic classes. So I'm like, oh, I know about this because I taught it in a more advanced class more recently. So I was like, right, so actually, you know, get has all these different meanings, like to obtain, to receive. And I'm like, yes, Katie, like, you know this. Anyway, what was I doing? Because I actually had confused myself because I was like, oh, I hadn't actually prepped for this in this class. So don't have my notes or anything, or like the boards that I would normally draw out. And then obviously this poor student is like, what have I done? Why have I asked this teacher this? Like, I'm so confused. And then all the rest of the class are obviously like, what's going on? Why are there so many different meanings of one word? So I don't know why that one did just come to my head as an example of sometimes less is more. Don't overcomplicate things. Stick to your, be flexible and be able to kind of move around and that kind of thing. But don't overcomplicate your lesson plans. And they have the kind of structure and the different levels and that kind of thing for a reason. So even if you think I can smash this out and explain this to everyone, it's not always the wisest thing, and you can really confuse things. So yeah, keep that in mind. Sometimes when you're answering questions. And then one piece of advice someone gave to me, it was actually my like the kind of lead teacher in my job, was make them laugh and make them talk. So if your students are having fun, they feel, comfortable and calm in your classroom and everything, you're doing something right. You've created a great environment, and one that they're all kind of comfortable with each other. They're comfortable with you, asking you questions and everything. And then if you've created that environment, you will get them talking and kind of engaging with you and engaging with each other. And when they're talking, they're practicing the language, they're, trial and erroring. You can hear them, you can pick up on different things that are right or wrong and kind of give advice that kind of way. So I think that's such a great piece of advice, that sometimes when I'd had a long day of teaching kind of 7 different classes, and I'm like, I'm losing it. I don't know if I can even speak English anymore. You've just got to remember to make them laugh, make them talk, and you've kind of ticked off the 2 most important things in your Tefl classroom. And especially around, we would have kind of, it was called exam time, but it's more just like checking in on where the students are at and things that they understand and moving levels and that kind of thing. And it was stressful for all the teachers because we had so many different things going on. It's stressful for the students because they want to do well. You've always just got to remember that learning a new language is supposed to be fun. It's amazing. It's an amazing tool to have. It's certainly, a lot of my students were working in the kind of tourist industry, so it helps them in their jobs. So it's amazing that you can make such an impact and also kind of directly see the changes that come with learning a new language. So yeah, if anything, kind of remember them. It's kind of 3. Keep it simple, make them laugh, make them talk, and you've kind of got it down. Keep it super simple. So they're my key pieces of advice on how not to suck in the classroom. But also, as I said at the beginning, you're not going to walk in on your first day of teaching and be like walked into that school. I certainly wasn't, but I hope these pieces of advice can kind of, one, help you kind of, if you feel that there are obstacles to kind of pursuing this experience, which I certainly had when I was kind of thinking about it and going into it, that you feel like it is a bit more manageable. And then obviously it's just hopefully been quite nice to see a little bit more about someone's experience and how it went and the kind of real life examples as well. One thing that I haven't kind of touched on enough is the kind of other teachers that were around me when I was starting. So I certainly relied, you have people around you who have got experience, they've been there for however many months already, they've gone through the trial and error part of it where they think, I'm never doing that again, or this one was really great. So do ask questions, do lean on the kind of community you have around you. I should have really put a photo in here of my other teachers. that we had, because I worked with such an amazing group of people from, Canada, South Africa, America, Scotland, kind of all around. And in the teacher's lounge, the amount of times I'm like, right, I have to teach this tomorrow. What am I doing? And they're like, listen, I taught this like 3 months ago. This is what I did. Here's a lesson plan. So do kind of lean on the others around you. That's what's so great about the experience of being abroad, is that you'll find like-minded people who are going through, they've also decided to leave their homes and go on this kind of, how many times have I said journey? But you know what I mean? To leave home and kind of embark on something completely different. And they'll have little different hints and tips for you of ways to make it a bit easier. But yeah, I certainly learned on them a lot. I certainly took a lot of ideas and materials and different things from teachers that I was around. And yeah, so you obviously I've spoken a lot about the kind of teaching aspect of it, and things that you might experience and go through when you do head abroad. But you also have the kind of free time as well, which is very necessary for kind of your headspace, your obviously like well-being and everything. So it's not kind of, you're not working 24/7. I work and then you'll have your weekends to explore new cities, go to different places, and that's a great time to kind of reprogram, process everything that's gone on throughout the week, and then you have that energy to come back and kind of hit it again on Monday morning. So yeah, that's the kind of other side of things, where you will be in a completely new country. You're able to experience it like a local and meet locals. So it's definitely a really precious experience. And as you can see, I can kind of talk about it, talk about the experience all day, the kind of different things and everything. So just check quickly. Okay, I think we're all good there. Yeah, so if anyone, I think you can still hear me. But if anyone has, my kind of final words are, if anyone has any questions about anything that I've kind of covered that you were like, oh, what was a bit more about that? The kind of games aspect of it, or differences between teaching adults versus teaching children and that kind of thing, I can, I'm more than happy to speak about this, as you can tell. So any questions, if you're seeing this, you're kind of in the Facebook group, so you can message on there. You can also send the team an email, either me or one of the other team members will get back to you. And then there's also the TikTok and Instagram as well, where you can find us and you can see kind of a bit more into different people in different countries. Because obviously I'm speaking about Latin America because that's where my experience was. But, people have kind of different countries and so many different options out there. So any questions about anything, we are happy. That's what we're here for, to kind of answer anything. And yeah, you can find me on there as well. So if there's anything I personally can help with, let me know. Yeah, so it's been kind of weird talking. I feel like I've been talking to myself for the past 50 minutes. So I hope you found it useful if you're watching this kind of on replay, and that kind of thing. I hope you've found it useful and can kind of feel like you will suck less if you kind of start this experience and kind of go through your own teaching experience as well. Okay, so I will leave it here and end the live stream here, but thank you so much for the people who have watched. I hope you found it a good use of kind of 50 minutes. And I'll have a look for any comments or anything if things didn't make sense and respond to them as well. So thank you so much for being with me this morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. And yeah, I'll see you online somewhere if you do get in touch. Okay, have a good day, everyone. Bye.